Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about my thoughts on my Adventures with Superman Episode 1. I'm only going to talk about Episode 1 and Episode 1 only because that's the only episode I watched because it was free on YouTube, and I don't have Adult Swim, and I don't have Max anymore. So I was really curious to see what this show was going to be about, especially since, it's a new superhero show. And not only that, but when I saw the still picture, the promotional picture, which you see right here, I'm all like, this looks very different. This looks very anime, and Lois looks very slap happy. I'm like, most likely I'm probably not gonna like it. Or maybe I will, and everything. Like, I don't know. So I watched it and everything, and I kept the open mind. Before I watched it, I saw two clips. I saw a clip of Clark and his parents out in the field, and he picked up, his spaceship. Then the second clip I saw was Clark transforming into Superman like Sailor Moon. Why? Because on Twitter, I kept seeing Sailor Moon trending. I'm like, cool, I love Sailor Moon. Maybe they're talking about Sailor Moon Cosmos, which came out in Japan in June, but nobody's talking about it. And so I clicked on it. I'm like, why is Superman here? And why are people complaining? And then I saw the transformation. So I'm like, that's different. And so after watching just the first episode, for me, this is not for me. The show is not for me. It's not my cup of tea. It's not the way I like Superman to be portrayed or superhero American cartoons. Now, there are reasons why it's not for me. Now, it could be very much for other people because of the style it's in. The style that is in, oh yeah, it's going to have this huge fan base and everything. But for me, I'm just not used to seeing stuff portrayed like this when it comes to American superheroes, except for one time. Well, actually, I'll say one and a half. Yeah, one and a half. Teen Titans. I love Teen Titans. It's a great show. When I first watched Teen Titans, I'm all like, hey, why does the art style look different? Why are they acting weird? I'm like, hey, they're acting like anime and everything. That's kind of odd. It was new, it was different, it was fresh, it was interesting, and it really fit that format for the team of teenagers and stuff. So I was totally digging it. But I remember telling myself I never want to see the adults ever act that way, like in Justice League and stuff. Then came all of the DC animated movies, and it was always drawn in an anime-ish type style, but it always had that American feel to it. Until they went like really anime with like say Batman Ninja and stuff. I didn't like that. That was too much for me. And I've also seen some Marvel anime too. Not particularly my favorite. I only like the Iron Man and the X-Men. And that's only to a certain degree levels and stuff. I couldn't get into Blade, and Wolverine just looks weird with a mullet. And the way he has his hands like flaring in the air as he has his claws out clawing stuff, that's just kind of weird and stuff. But I can totally see how this could have this huge fan base. It's an American cartoon, but it has a very anime-ish style to it. And the animation design, the way the characters' faces look, and in certain other aspects that have like little anime-ish type thing. Similar to Teen Titans, but more watered down. And so the characters have been all completely redesigned in different personalities and stuff, and I can get on board with that. I can get on board with Superman. This Superman is like his typical Boy Scout type way, but he has some insecurities about himself, and he's very shy. And I remember that from the Tomorrowverse when he first had his solo Superman like movie. And I've seen different portrayals of Superman before, klutzy, more confident, arrogant, stuff like that. So, whatever, I can dig that. Lois and Jimmy, on the other hand, I can't get behind Lois, at least in this first episode, like I said before, I'm only talking about the first episode. I don't know how everything else is later on. Lois is very slap happy, like very slap happy, and she talks a lot, an extreme lot, and she's just like always like she's a go-getter, but in a slap happy kind of annoying kind of way, and that gets on my nerves. Jimmy is your traditional nerdy Jimmy, but he's your extreme nerdy Jimmy. He's very nerdy and he's very talkative. The way Jimmy is portrayed here, like, okay, he's black. Because lately Jimmy has been black, like, in the Supergirl show and stuff. But he's black, but he acts and talks like a nerdy white boy. It's like they had the intentions of making him white, but then they diversified him and made him black. And yes, there are nerdy black people. Steve Urkel was a nerdy black person, and he talked like a little white dude. But I don't know, he just comes off as like a black white boy and everything. And it's not really working. And the same thing kind of with Lois. Lois is Asian in this, but she's coming off as an Asian white girl by the way she's so slap happy and talks and everything. And so I kind of wish they would have been portrayed more ethnic, you know what I'm saying? If you're going to diversify them, make them more ethnic to like, how Asian people act or how black people like, talk and act and stuff. You don't have to go stereotypical, but at least make it sound realistic, you know what I'm saying? And one thing I've noticed talking about like race in this show is interesting and funny. I'm all for diversity, so I could care less of who you like race bent and stuff like that. But I've noticed something. Everybody in this is race bent except for Superman. In the first episode, there's not a single white person in the whole episode except for Superman. Even all the background characters are people of color. I'm just kind of like, that's not really how you diversify a show and everything. Unless it's like a predominantly like, certain race type show. Like say Vita, the show, that's predominantly like Hispanic. So there's tons of Hispanics there. Or, you'll have a show like Living Single, which is predominantly black. So you have a lot more black people there. And the thing about Hollywood, I've been saying before, they can't quite get their diversity and right. Because they're pushing for it so hard, they just like put it there, right? But it's like, it's obvious what they did. Now, I don't know who created this show. I don't know the race of the person who created it. Now, if it's a person of color, I can understand why they did what they did. But if it's a white person who did it, then it's kind of like, okay, you're just pandering to people, hoping that they will like tune in and be like, look at all the diversity and stuff. But it's kind of like, when I say I want diversity, I want everybody like in there and stuff. And it's just like, it doesn't feel genuine. It doesn't feel natural and stuff. It's okay to have white people in your show. It's okay to have like, a couple of like background characters white. But in this first episode, you clearly see what they're trying to do. And it's not going to come off very well. And then, of course, when the evil, toxic people start seeing it, then they're going to go crazy over it and start complaining about it with their millions of videos and stuff. Then the problem about Hollywood, they don't know how to have a balance. When they see something trending like race and everything, they just like flood it with like people of color. And that's it. And they do it hopefully to get clicks and hopefully you'll like it and get like awards and stuff like that. But they don't know how to have a nice blend of it. Anyways. So one thing I've noticed about this is that Jimmy and Clark are roommates. They live in the same like apartment place. This is probably a nod to the comics and probably a nod to that one television show, or at least a commercial or ad that I saw that had Superman and Jimmy sleeping in the same bedroom but on separate beds. Same thing happened with Bruce and Dick Grayson, Batman and Robin, and everything. Because, back in those 60s and stuff, they weren't allowed to show a man and a woman in the same bedroom for little kids to see. Makes absolutely no sense. But, that's the crazy ways it was back then. And then because of that, they thought Batman was gay. And so then they started flooding a lot of his villains with female. That's why Bruce Wayne is so woman crazy, because of that. And it's just like, whatever. So I see that's a nod to that. So they're friends, they're pals, they're buddies. Similar how Jimmy is with Superman and stuff. So also they switched around how Lois is attracted to Clark as opposed to her attracted to Superman. Because right now in this first episode, there is no Superman. He only wears a vigilante type costume that's makeshift. And, this is something that's been changing a lot in the Superman lore, that Lois is now attracted to Clark as opposed to attracted to Superman. Mainly because I guess people felt like, oh, hot Lois Lane, headstrong Lois Lane, isn't attracted to a nerd. She's only attracted to the man with the huge muscles who save people. Then when she finds out they're the same person, she's not exactly too happy, but then she still dates him because she knows he's Superman. So I get why they changed that. Now, this is very geared to young people, and I mean very geared to them, which is another reason why I can't get on board with this show. It's too kiddish for me with the way the characters portray themselves in their everyday lives. I'm not used to that. I was cool with it with Teen Titans because that was a teenage superhero group, but I can't get on board with Teen Titans Go. And you know how I am with humor and my superhero stuff. I'm like done with it because of like the MCU. But this is too slap happy for me. So for me, it's just not for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't like the way Jimmy and Lois act. They just act too different, especially Lois. Lois is just extremely annoying to me. Like, she gets on my nerves by the way she acts. Also, like, I don't like the Sailor Moon transformation. That's bizarre. I get they're going for something different, but that's kind of how that one Avengers cartoon was in the 90s. They kept transforming like Power Rangers, and it's just odd and stuff. And I don't like the abundance of humor in this show. It's just too much for me. I like a simple Superman show. It's like he has his normal life that's separate from everybody else. He turns into Superman. He fights the villains. It's more mature because, but sometimes it can be too mature because the thing about Superman, no matter what version of it, no matter if it's comics, cartoons, television shows, live action movies, he tends to get boring at times. Like, take Superman the animated series. I like it. I don't love it. I like it. The reason why I don't love it is because at times it feels very bland. It feels kind of stale and boring. And that's because of the era and the time it looks like it's in and stuff, with the technology and stuff. And, it just has that boring kind of feel at times. Even Superman gets boring in the comics. Like, that's why they killed him off and everything. Then they brought him back because of the demand of the fans. But every once in a while, he gets boring and they have to kind of reboot him or change him up and everything. Superman has always just been a very boring character. And I get they want to infuse life with humor in an animated style, but it's too much for me because I'm not into that because I'm too old and I don't like that style. And I'm not the hugest anime fan. I do like it, but even the anime I like is just too much humor in it. Like Sailor Moon and Digimon are like the two favorites that I had to have humor in it, and it's too much humor at times. Ronin Warriors had like no humor, and I like that. Same with Death Note. No humor, I like that. And so those are my main like reasons why I can't get behind this show. It's mostly just the humor and the different portrayals of their characteristics, not the actual race of them, but their characteristics. However, I will say this: I did not know at first that Lois was Asian because she's not drawn like an Asian person. And because normally in animation, you can tell who's Asian, whether it's like the Justice League cartoon or even Hey Arnold and that dude who lives there, you know? Like you can tell they're Asian. Here, I cannot tell she's Asian until I saw her voice actor. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And so this cartoon, the first episode, um, we see a young Clark and he's trying to get his kite out the tree and he can't get it. And it's kind of humorous when he's jumping up and down like a little kid. And then he jumps so hard. Oh no, he sees something in the street, like a car accident. And he saves that person when he was running towards them. Now, one thing they do is that when his powers first activate, or at least when they activate all the time, his eyes glow and there's an electrical current around him for some bizarre reason. It's to show he's powered up, but it's unnecessary. I don't like that. So he saves that person, realizing something's different with him. And then he uses his powers to get his kite, and then he flies around in the sky. And so, we see him and Jimmy years later. They're in the apartment. He's a bit late, a bit of a klutz and everything, and insecure about himself. So in a way, he's interning him and Jimmy at like the Daily Planet. Lois is there and she thinks she's gonna get like a big either like pay raise or like a new position that's higher up. She's happy, she's excited, because she wants to go out in the field and start reporting. But Perry tells her that like she's just there to train the new interns, who she met Clark earlier at a store. And so she's so slap happy. So slap happy. Well, anyway, Clark had saw a person driving the car. At first I thought it was a man with like, his head shaved on the side and a little mullet looking type of hairstyle, whatever you call it. But it turns out to be a woman and everything. I was very shocked and surprised because she looks like a man. But because of that hairstyle, she'd have gave it away. Anyway, they're villains and everything. I'm not sure what group they're with, or they're just made up for the show. But they're stealing giant robot parts and stuff like that. Very humorous, very incompetent. Lois, Jimmy, and Clark are the trio of this show, and they go into like investigate and stuff like that, and they get caught up in all their like criminal activity. So they're running away from like the giant robots, this and that. Clark, who doesn't have a suit yet, he just puts on a makeshift outfit with a hoodie, and he goes to business and stuff. And, he's doing his Superman thing and it's catching the attention of Lois and stuff, but she already has a crush on Clark. And then we see him use his powers and it's still electrical field around him. I don't like that electrical field around his body. It's bizarre and it's weird. Anyways, he whoops on like, the robot and everything, and she going back to look for Clark. Now, this is the part that's kind of odd and weird. Now, Clark had got pushed in rubble, and so they thought he was there the whole time. Of course, he's Superman. So when they go back and they free all the rubble, all they see is his tie laying there in the rubble. Then we see Clark running around the corner like, oh man, I escaped and I got so scared and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? But he's wearing his tie. Why are there two ties there? So I don't know if that was drawn on mistake or purpose and everything. Because maybe he thought, oh, I need to change clothes. Oh, I don't have my tie, so let me go to the store and get a new tie. So maybe they'll try to figure out who he is. Maybe, I don't know. And because Perry kept calling them in because he didn't want them investigating and stuff, and Lois did not want to cooperate and everything. And so that's basically just the first episode and stuff. They want to know who he is and like expose his identity, this new makeshift dude, and ask him a bunch of questions and stuff like that. I'm assuming in the second episode he gets his Superman costume. I don't know how. because like I said, I haven't seen it yet, but I saw the transformation and it's really weird and bizarre that it's Sailor Moon. So I could understand this show can have its fans, you know what I'm saying? People who love anime, people who love American May or whatever they call it and stuff. I totally get that. But for somebody like me who's not really into anime and is tired of all the humor and stuff, it's just not me. It's just too different of a Superman cartoon for me. I mean, it still has the beats of working on the Daily Planet, insecurity, clumsiness, Lois go-gettingness and everything, Jimmy's nerdiness, Perry's meanness and everything. But it just feels and looks too different for me. I mean, when it's on Max, I'll check the whole thing out. Maybe it gets better and stuff. But if it's not for me, then, you know, it's just the way of the dodo. But it's weird. It's on Adult Swim, which is weird because this doesn't feel like your typical Adult Swim cartoon. It's extremely tame. This should have been on Cartoon Network. I don't understand why it's not. Nothing about this screams Adult Swim and everything. It doesn't feel like South Park. It doesn't feel like Family Guy. It doesn't feel like any of those other Adult Swim shows. Why is it on there? I don't get that. Do they not want kids to watch it? Because it aims to kids and everything. And so what don't make no sense is that why would you have this very kiddish program on there? So once it's done, then they'll watch all the adult stuff and their parents will freak out. Like, I don't understand that. But then again, it's David Zaslav, and you know he don't know what he's doing. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.